Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Realcomm Live. As I've been doing for the last 6 months or so, is giving one word or two to define or describe the episode. And today, extremely important. What we're going to be talking about today is not necessarily a fun topic. In the world of real estate technology, there's fun, interesting, innovative things to do that move the ball forward. Those are the things we all get excited about. But unfortunately, from time to time, we have to play defense. And what defense means is keeping your systems, your buildings, your people safe, hence the topic of cybersecurity in the built environment. We've got a phenomenal group of people on this call today, dedicated, hardworking, committed individuals who've been fighting this real estate cyber issue or dealing with it for at least 5, 6, and in some cases 7 years. The folks on the call today or on the episode today are going to be Greg Fitzpatrick, our brand new executive director for the Real Estate Cyber Consortium, Jim Whalen, SVP, CIO and CTO for Boston Properties, BXP, also a senior level executive member of RECC and really one of the driving forces. And last but not least, Sean Nealon, SVP, Global Head Cybersecurity and Information and Security for Brookfield, who's also on the RECC board and really brings that deep CISO knowledge and expertise to the conversation. So with that, let's bring the guys in and start to have this conversation. Gentlemen, how are you this morning?
Doing well.
Good afternoon in Boston, Jim. So
afternoon in Boston. Yeah, and who knows where else people are watching from. It's really interesting to have Greg and Jim on. Jim's been with this conversation since the very beginning. Greg, as I mentioned, RECC's new executive director, but the time level and commitment that it's taken to keep this conversation going at a time when people have got a lot of other priorities on their list, right? So let's start with each of you just giving a little bit of background. Jim, we'll start with you just so everybody has an idea of where you sit in this cybersecurity conversation.
Sure, Jim. Yeah. So obviously I mentioned the CIO and CTO of BXP. I've been here 25 years and just oversee the running of our enterprise, the security that gets embedded, technology that gets embedded in our properties, as well as behind the scenes tech. So again, I see cyber as a kind of a table stakes. It is enabler. We need it to enable all the tech and innovation that we do on our platform.
I'll add a little color to that. Not are you, Jim, in my opinion, one of the most consistent, successful CIO leadership, executive leaders in this industry. But I think your willingness to share consistently for the 20 plus years I've known you, it's one thing to be smart and do good things. It's another to be willing to take extra time and share with the industry. And you've been really consistent with that. So thank you for all your time and effort over the years. Greg, the newest to the team, little background.
Yes. Currently I'm the business development lead for Cochrane Supply and Engineering in the area of IoT and Integration. I've been in the industry close to 30 years now and worked as a consulting engineer, commissioning agent, owner's representative, and landed at Cochrane about 5 years ago. And cyber awareness has come to the forefront of every conversation now that we're starting to put more IP devices, more remote access when it comes to OT solutions. So what we want to do, and my involvement in RECC, is to make cyber awareness more of a topic when it comes to the manufacturers, the A&E firms, the commissioning agent, and all these other building stakeholders that touch commercial property.
Right. Well, and the key word that you said, in my opinion, is stakeholders, plural.
Yes.
You look at a building and all the people that touch that building from a technological standpoint, and it's a large group of people. And if you have the building owners aware, but the integrators incapable, that doesn't work. If you have the integrators capable and the building owners, operators, service providers unaware. So this battle is fighting a lot of different fronts. And it is so good to have you on our team with your 30 years of real life experience on what it takes to build these intelligent, smart buildings as well as to protect them. So good to have you. Sean, you're the scariest, and I thought you maybe would come on in a hoodie today. You're the guy who gets to read all the scary stuff and then share it with us. So give us a little of your background.
Sure. I'm Sean Nealon. I'm the global head of cyber information security for Brookfield Properties. I've been with Brookfield for 6 years now. I've been in IT and security for 22, I think, years now, 23 years now. And just it's interesting, as many of you know, Brookfield is a large organization, a lot of subsidiaries, and so my role is an interesting hybrid where I help run information security for some groups, and then I oversee information security for a portfolio of 80 plus companies. So it's a wide swath of real estate in every vertical around the world.
I mean, all kidding aside, can you sleep at night? I mean, with all those buildings, all those systems, all the technology that is under constant attack with a high profile organization like Brookfield, I mean, is it manageable?
It's manageable. I mean, I think the thing to always remember, and the thing I always try to remind people is, cybersecurity is a business problem, not an IT problem, or not my problem. So, there's a lot of us that are focused on this and working on it. So it's not just me that has trouble sleeping when we have an issue. It's the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's
Yeah.
as long as it's a business focus and people are working on it, it's a lot easier to sleep.
That's a critical thing I want everybody watching to remember. It is not a one person, one department problem. It is an organizational issue. And if you don't have that organizational awareness, number one, and commitment, number two, hard battle to fight. Hard battle to fight. So, all right, Jim, since you've been there since the beginning, that first meeting, that clandestine meeting of 40, where we were told about a breach in a major manufacturer's equipment. Tell us a little bit about REC's mission, goals. Why was it formed?
Sure. Yeah, I know. It was, as you mentioned, Jim, it was at Realcomm San Jose, but what,
Yeah.
2016, I think, and
Yeah.
a couple of us, it wound up being 40, stayed after everything ended, and you got us a room, and we started to talk about the threat landscape and the risks to commercial real estate. And out of that became there was 3 or 4 of us that kind of took the baton, and then started to think about a more formal community that resulted in RECC, the formation of RECC. And first couple of years we were really just kind of a volunteer getting it together, had some growing membership. About 2 years ago we more formally registered as a nonprofit. We hired a part-time executive director. Now Greg is in that role, and really began, I think, a more, building critical mass, building this community. And they're all owners and operators of real estate, commercial real estate. So we have both, Sean and myself that they're commercial office landlords and own a lot of other different property types. But it also has commercial owners and universities and other demographics that are now part of the membership. And it is a critical mass now. I mean, I forget what we quote is in terms of the square footage, but it is significant.
Over 10
Yeah,
billion.
it's
I think it's over
significant.
10
It's
billion.
significant, right? And so the real mission is really, I think about it. We're trying to influence. Greg brought this up. The supply chain. We're trying the whole supply chain, and that happens not only from the manufacturers. Greg was talking through the installers, through the maintainers, but also like within our organizations, how we get the disciplines, and as Sean, to take it as a business issue, not just as an IT issue, right? So it's really about influencing the supply chain, and secondly, really sharing best practices in a communal community, because this is not just one of us. It's a threat to the entire industry. So
Well, and I think the one word word that comes to my mind when I think about this 5-6 year journey is leverage. I mean, everybody's busy. Everybody's got very big to-do lists. And instead of one person coming up with the right answers or the processes or the protocols, let's do it as a group. Let's share it. And there is a whole, I mean, we're probably 5% of the industry, my bet, as far as people who have gone deep on cybersecurity for the built environment. And so those coming, up behind, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. This group has built a foundation on which to share best practices.
There's thought leadership around the table. It's people like Sean, but there's a lot of others, and it's a communal effort. So
yeah, well, and yeah, and like I said, I was in a meeting yesterday talking about cybersecurity, and I just basically said the guys in the hoodies, have no organization, have no bureaucracy, don't do Teams calls. They just go out looking for havoc, and they're very efficient. So, big organizations do have things that they have to deal with in orderly fashion. So this word leverage just keeps coming back to me. Like, how do we leverage each other, share best practices with each other, so not everyone has to reinvent the wheel. So it's really just a pleasure to be with you guys and be along for this journey. And it's been not an easy one, but I think, like you said, we're making real progress. All right, let's talk specifically about what are the threats, right? And we've seen the movies, and we've gotten scared watching buildings get shut down. But Sean, I'm going to go to you first, since you touch it, minute by minute every day. What kind of generic threats that you can share with us that building owners, operators, anybody with a building needs to be concerned with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. One is, that the building can be, occupied. So, building management systems, building systems can be shut down. If you're in a large office tower, elevator shut down, that's a life and safety issue. If HVAC turns off, that's a life and safety issue. If you have a, sports complex or a concert venue and the lights turn off, the lighting is controlled, that's a huge safety issue. So, there's the impact to the public, there's impact to ability to collect revenue, and frankly, it's safety. Like, we keep everyone in our building safe. We take that very seriously. As far as the data side too, I do own privacy as well, and privacy is a huge concern. We collect a lot of data. We have data on our tenants. We have data on our visitors. We have data on our people that live in our multifamily units or our single family rentals. So we're very serious about protecting our data as well, not just being compliant with applicable laws, but really making sure that we're doing what's right for our customers. Those are the primary things that I see. There's obviously the asset value issue as well. So, reputational risk. If a building has a major cyber breach, it's in the newspaper, it could devalue the asset. It could cause an issue. Also, building systems are very expensive. There have been issues, not in specific to real estate, but in other areas of operational technology, where there's been destructive malware that would take systems down. If that were to happen to an air handler or a very large system in one of our buildings, that could be a $500,000 system that is not replaced in a few hours. It's a very difficult thing to have to deal with.
Right. We had one case study that we presented, I think about a year ago, a building in Israel, where the building was attacked by malware and so wrapped up that elevators weren't operational, access control, lighting. I mean, they just locked this thing up. And I think, if I recall, Jim, that it was 3-4 months before they finally got everything undone and got that building going again.
Yeah, it was very pervasive, because they really didn't have the proper, in my understanding, proper segmentation in the building, and it basically moved laterally, and we're on a central server that controlled the entire building, right? It was really that kind of thing. And we've had those kind of events, Jim, and not that wound up being disruptive, but we have had, someone, a service tech walking in with a memory stick and plugging it into, an HVAC and infecting, downloading a payload of malware onto a server. And again, our protections kind of caught that the communication woke up and started to look at connection points for a known ransomware location. But that's another, that's a simple example of someone, our providers downstream not having good practices coming in and actually impacting our environment. So.
And we're going to take a brief break for hear from one of our sponsors. When we come back, I want to spend maybe a minute talking about the IT-OT connection and the area of expertise between IT and OT that sometimes does not overlap and causes some problems. And I think we may have some solutions for this. So we'll be right back.
Rebot saves one of our clients over 50 hours a month on their property management project. Another client saves 25 hours every month by using its AI-powered invoice automation. And Rebot finishes the task in just 30 minutes. RPA as a service empowers you to advance your analytics, guarantee consistency, and increase productivity, all while enhancing accuracy and improving employee morale. As a scalable, reliable solution, Rebot becomes an extension of your team, growing alongside you and creating more time for the human members of your team to do what they do best. Your time is important. Let us help you create more of it. Rebot is powered by Retransform, a global technology services provider and partner.
All right, Jim, I just want to piggyback on something you just said, about the IT component of all this. So we were talking before we came on about the relationship between IT and OT. An IT professional, 20 years, learns about bits and bytes and IP and servers and all the stuff that we grew up with, right? And then an OT, building engineers, they've got that equipment that they know inside and out.
Mhm.
So they're now expected to learn and understand the whole IT infrastructure that we, took 25 years to learn about. IT folks who usually were worrying about enterprise solutions, now they got to worry about all these pieces of equipment from 30 different manufacturers going back 30 years. Can we bridge this gap? Is the IT/OT gap getting bridged?
Yeah, well, I think it is. I know that's how our mantra and culture here are. I can tell you, like our head of, Sean's equivalent here on my team was a former building engineer. That's how he got trained, and he moved into IT 12, 13 years ago. So he knows how to talk to engineers, in building teams. But there is nuance. So when we have like all these controls on the IT side, and again, when you move over to the operational, there's all these nuances. It's much more of a varied environment of devices and types of equipment. And so there are boundaries. And this is actually one of the topics we're going to bring. It's very prevalent right now and is like one of the top rated kind of conversations we're going to have at the forum, in June when we get to Realcomm, is this boundary and how we push and where are the nuances, where are the areas that you have to manage and navigate.
Yeah, I mean, we've been dealing with the IT/OT integration, organizational integration. I think it feels like about 10 years now. It's just you just got to keep pushing, right? I mean, these are people who grew up in certain segments of the industry, sometimes isolated and siloed. We got to break down those silos and get everybody talking from the same hymn book, if you will. All right, so let's get back to RECC. What do members get when they join RECC? And Jim, you've been around the longest, so I'm going to throw it to you first. I mean, when somebody new comes into RECC, what can they expect?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of comment that we are not here to. I mean, I don't want to be solving every problem or challenge by myself. I want to have a community that I can reference and leverage best practice and learn from others, so I'm not replicating, or spinning my, spinning my wheel to kind of figure it out. So I think that's really for me. It's about the community and what we benefit from just being in the room together, being on calls every month, talking around topics, bringing in expertise, and then being able to reach out. I had a question recently. I posted it out to the leadership board. I got 15 responses because we were trying to change to a new pen tester that had OT expertise as an example, right? So that's just an example of just how how the community works.
So Sean, you came into RECC, now part of the executive board, executive committee, I should say. If you're at the top of the food chain as far as technical expertise, I mean, you've spent what do you get out of RECC as an organization, or are you there more to give?
It's definitely still both. I'm happy to share my expertise, but I've reached out to Jim. I've reached out to several others on the leadership board. When I have questions or topics come up that I'm unsure about. While I do have a lot of cyber experience, I've only been in real estate for 6 years, and the others on the board have deep experience in real estate. They've been there for a long time, so there are definitely areas where I reach out just to understand better, things about the business, things about how things work, and I think it's a really good reciprocal relationship as we work together and talk with each other. And the documentation that we prepared in the past has been helpful, and I know that there's new things coming that are going to be beneficial to the overall group.
You could not have written that description any better. People having different areas of expertise, but maybe not every area of expertise, and then you can look to this group to fill the holes that you've got. So in your case, didn't have 25, 30 years of real estate experience like Jim does, but nonetheless, there's a real back and forth benefit there. Greg, the newest to our group, but a good understanding of the industry. What do you think the real benefits are for new folks considering being part of RECC?
I think that one of the things that we were talking about moving forward with when it comes to RECC is connecting the dots between the real estate owners, the A&E firms, the manufacturers, the installing contractors. But one that no one ever talks about is the commissioning agents, right? Most of your larger projects have commissioning agents, and there's an effort to promote cyber commissioning, right? Cyber commissioning, from pre-functional checklists to functional testing of the network and the devices and things like that. And I think all of these new ideas that are being introduced to the cyber world and connecting the cyber world to the manufacturers, I think that's one of the biggest benefits now.
Yeah. Well, in the ITOT conversation keeps coming up. If you go to like say a corporation that's got real estate and you talk to their general IT group, in charge of accounting and enterprise applications, what percentage of their time, energy, or interest is on OT? I'd bet you it's less than 5%, right? But then all of a sudden you're talking about bringing protocols to cyber, just like we have everywhere else. That's again what comes out of a mixed organization with people there. You coming from the integrator fronts, Sean coming from the CISO front, Jim IT real estate. I mean, that collective knowledge base, that's where the magic happens.
We have a very substantial member who's done that journey on the corporate side, Jim. Really bringing the IT and OT from the real estate side together. And there's so many lessons learned from their journey that they undertook.
I think having all the stakeholders in one room is the magic, right?
Absolutely.
And instead of everybody going to different rooms and having different conversations in their own silos, break down those silos, get to know each other. And that's how, because IT goes into every aspect of an organization, from the CEO's desk all the way into a generator or a HVAC system in a building. And that's a complex puzzle, and it needs all hands on deck. All right, so we're getting ready to go to a planning meeting, or not a planning meeting, kind of a intense couple days RECC. What are the top issues? But coming out of that, we're going to have some of the top topics that we're going to present at the Cyber Forum in June. Jim, a couple topics that you see bubbling to the top for 23?
I think some of it we talked about, it was really this IT to OT journey that companies are on, where I think incident response plans are front of mind. It is definitely like in the maturity cycle, something that companies are obviously, are been focused on more recently as they've taken care of some of the earlier other things of kind of like the NIST framework, and then risk frameworks are still like really trying to get grounded in the governance and the engagement model that you're doing with your business side.
Yep, Sean, any topics you see floating to the top of your list?
One of the ones that still comes up frequently for us is around asset management and vulnerability management and operational technology. So I definitely see that one being a key importance for the wider community.
Yeah, even in the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing pen tests coming up again and again. I've heard tabletop, where the Realcomm webinars are going to be doing a tabletop, I think in April, showing how 10 different people react during an incident, and putting together a playbook. Greg, any final thoughts on what topics you think are bubbling up for 2023?
Integrating cyber into Division 25, which is integrated automation in the specifications. That's where
what inning are we in?
I would say the first.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love what Greg is bringing to the table, because we try to impact our construction disciplines around that. And you coming in, we've got others on that are championing this and sponsoring this on our board. I think it could potentially have some real impact, Jim, if we bring focus. We will bring focus.
This is where the ideas go into the weeds, and the weeds are hard, and the weeds take a long time, and they're boring. But you don't move this ball forward without getting through this stuff. And Greg, I agree. Yeah,
and there's a ton of versions of Division 25 out there, and I think the key is to get everyone in the room collectively, take all the pieces and parts from Division 25 and how most engineering firms think it should be constructed, and make sure that cyber is right in an area where it can't be missed, right? You want to make sure that it can't be missed, make sure that the commissioning agents know how to commission the systems. And I think that's more important than anything, because at the end of the day, if it lands in the section of a specification, it's part of the contract documents, right? And someone owes it to you.
Well, our call, I think, I think a pretty smart group of people and been on this for a while, but I think our speaker on our last call got some attention when he was talking about, the different BACnet, was it BACnet SC? Yeah, I mean, and the
Yes,
Division 25. I mean, this is getting into the weeds where the rubber meets the road, and you don't get over the finish line without going through this field. So,
absolutely.
all right, Greg, back to you. Just give some folks some final thoughts about why they should be involved in RECC, and we'll bring up the website for you, and just give us a little overview on why new members should be interested in coming on board.
Well, it's basically about the content, right? We've got 4 or 5 best practices groups who are really, really heavily involved in producing, publishing, and distributing some of the framework out there that will help some of the owners move forward. We have our monthly leadership meetings that includes different speakers that we invite in. It can be 1 to 2 speakers along with our breakout sessions. So for me, when I talk to potential members, I always let them know that it's going to be engaging. It's going to be something that when you walk away, you'll see where our industry is moving, right? And where cyber is moving and what cyber awareness means to the OT environment. And that's one of the main things that I focus on when I'm talking to new members, is a collective group of people that are in this think tank that are pushing cyber to the forefront of every conversation when it comes to OT.
Very well said. Very well said. So at this point, we're out of time. I'm going to bring Howard on to do the news in a second. Jim, final thoughts?
Oh, just join the community. It's about a communal effort. So
Yeah.
Sean?
Yeah, no, completely agree with Jim. The more the merrier. I think it all adds to the value of the organization.
Greg, final thoughts to you.
I'm happy to be at the helm of the leadership right now, and hopefully we can get a more diverse group when it comes to different disciplines and different stakeholders. I'd like to see more A&E firms maybe join, more systems integrators, more manufacturers, so that they can know exactly at the end of the day, what are the owner's project requirements when it comes to cyber. They need to hear the real estate community's voice.
The message over the last 5, 6, 7 years is getting more and more refined. It makes more and more sense. And I think, as Charles says, who we got to do a big shout out to Charles, who was one of those first guys who got us started. It feels like we're pivoting to another level. And I agree. I think we're getting to a new stage in the organization, and it's because of folks like you. So, guys, thank you. Really appreciate your time, and we'll be seeing you in a few weeks, but I'm sure I'll be talking to you before then. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, with that, let's bring on Howard Berger to give us some insight as to what the heck is going on in the real estate technology world this week, and what the big news stories are. Howard?
Well, thank you, Mr. Young, and thank you, Greg, Jim, and Sean, for all your contributions.
Great job. They just did a phenomenal job.
I mean, what you've done, but and both to Realcomm and for the Real Estate Cyber Consortium is Herculean, and thank you for joining us today. This is a great show today.
Yeah, the thing that people can't go lost is that these folks have been working tirelessly for 6, 7 years behind the scenes, keeping this conversation going to the point where they're ready to share with the industry at large. And it's been a lot of heavy lifting. And
yeah, I don't think we can describe. I don't think we can describe it clearly enough so people really understand
how much work,
level of their efforts that they've invested in
meetings, calls, preparing for events, content. I mean, tireless. So let me get out of your way, do the news, and I'll be back in a second.
I'll try to fly through these. I've got a few news stories from our weekly briefing that goes out every Thursday morning. If you don't see it in your inbox, just go up to realcomm.com, click on news, and you can subscribe there. But today, our lead story, so our Lisa Woods, I think most of you know her, has made her annual trek to the AHR Expo. It's one of the biggest annual HVAC and refrigeration trade shows. And she was there a couple of weeks. It's in Georgia World Congress in Atlanta. A massive show, 65,000 attendees, some 1,700 exhibitors, and it nearly doubled in size from 2022. So this year, more than ever, there was a huge focus on automation and innovation. It was apparent both in the technology pavilion that they have on the trade show floor and in the smart building educational sessions, which were literally bulging at the seams there. They weren't just talking about HVAC and chillers, but they were talking about network interoperability and cybersecurity, analytics, standards, procurement, collaborations, the talent shortage, ESG, supply chain, huge focus on tech and automation. And we asked a few of the attending industry thought leaders for some of their observations and takeaways on the show, and we received some really thoughtful and insightful comments, which I will not go into here. You're going to have to read the article, which I very much encourage you to read. So thanks, Lisa, for a great article. Also like to shout out to this week's tech partner, Yardi, for a great article by Ray Seagars, who's the solution consultant at Yardi, and it's entitled Creating Pathways to Higher ESG Scores. So according to Harvard Law School Forum on Corporate Governance, a 2020 survey by Sustainability found that ESG ratings are the most frequently referenced source of information that institutional investors rely on to gauge ESG for performance. And another survey found that 88% of investment professionals use third-party ESG ratings as part of their investment process. So it's becoming apparent that funds are flowing more freely into ESG-labeled investment products and projects. So how do you measure, track, and improve your ESG score to increase your asset value? So it starts with an overall ESG strategy encompassing benchmarking and reporting and certification, energy auditing, operational strategies, and to name a few. So there's much more in this article. It's really a great article. I'd encourage you all to have a look. Next article, past Realcomm IBCon attendees. If you've attended, you're probably familiar with our best practice, Smart Building Best Practice Showcase. This is where we bring in 30, 40 real estate execs representing some of the most iconic smart building projects from around the world, and attendees can mix with these executives in a very informal yet highly interactive poster type session. So this week we're highlighting one of these projects, National Landing, which is the largest walkable mixed-use downtown development in Virginia, and it encompasses Crystal City, the eastern part of Pentagon City, and the northern portion of Potomac Yard. Now, the developer JBG Smith is making National City the first 5G smart city at scale, and they're deploying a cutting-edge digital infrastructure with fiber, edge data centers, high-capacity compute, ubiquitous 5G and Wi-Fi, and CBRS private networks throughout the project. Now, in addition to the seamless indoor-outdoor connectivity, they also have autonomous vehicles on street and deliveries via AI-enabled robots, seamless touchless retail experience, and augmented and virtual reality with both mobile devices and wearables. Now, according to John Walsh, who's Accenture's chief sales officer, on National Landing's design, he said, the physical location and the digital capabilities that are enabled in this environment are probably 15 years ahead of anything else that we're seeing. So if you're not familiar with National Landing, I would encourage you, have a look at this week's profile. Finally, this is a great article by Sharif Ibrahim at Microsoft on how Bentall Green Oak is building its sustainability platform. So just a few years ago, it was relatively rare that companies either knew of or cared about ESG reporting. Now the entire world is literally scrambling to figure out why it is important and how to and what the heck to do with it. But lack of data, reporting formats, and standards are challenges that still need to be overcome. So Bentall Green Oak was an early adopter of ESG practices, and last year they embarked on a month-long pilot to test out the Microsoft Sustainability Managers platform. And the goal, figure out whether it would support their ESG reporting requirements and their data integrations, so they could easily consolidate ESG data from multiple sources, automate key processes like project status updates, performance management, report generation. But as a bonus, what they found is it also gave them the ability to integrate with other Microsoft solutions like Power Apps and build no-code data collection tools to visualize data insights. Interesting article, especially if you're looking to build versus buy an ESG reporting platform. Check it out.
ESG is becoming, it has been a big topic for 20 years, on and off, at least the E part, and it seems like it's really taken hold, and we're seeing processes, programs, companies, organizations, technologies really moving in this direction?
I think we owe it to our audience just to report on the advances being made here, because we're still, I think it still feels like we're in the early, we're still at, inning 2, if that. And there is going to be a lot to overcome, a lot of challenges to overcome, and
Big time,
being
yeah.
able to make
Well, I
programs work.
hold that thought for a second, because we're gonna go to a break, and then when I introduce next week's show, this theme of ESG is going to continue.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
All right, have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye. All right, before I introduce next week's show, let's hear from our final sponsor, and I'll be right back. All right. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you to our great guest, the executive leadership team from the Real Estate Cyber Consortium, RECC. Guys, as always, did a great job, not just today, but for a long, long time. And we want to say thank you for your efforts. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to the Realcomm team to put this great episode together. So now on to next week. We're going to continue the theme of ESG. And because ESG has become such a big topic, we're going to devote some pre-conference time to it, meaning it's going to have 3+ hours of its own time before the conference starts to talk specifically about ESG from a technical perspective, from the technology angle. That's where we live. And we got a great advisory board. If you haven't seen them, go up to our website and just look at our advisors. You'll see the people we pulled together. And we've got at least 3. We may have some surprise guests who are going to be joining us next week for this conversation about ESG, this ESG advisory group, and then what we're planning at the conference. Clayton Ulrich, SVP Operations, Engineering, and Sustainability for Hines. Great organization. Clayton, a great industry exec. Maureen Ehrenberg, CRE Blue Sky IBE, has been on leadership teams of JLL, CBRE, WeWork, really a powerhouse in the industry. And Michael Dashel, SVP Sustainability from Brookfield Properties, one of the biggest asset property owners in the world. So we've got a great episode planned. If you're focusing on ESG or just want to understand what it is, I really encourage you to tune in, and we're looking forward to a great show next week. So with that, I'd like to bid farewell, say goodbye, and all of you have a great day, great weekend. Be well.